Commander Jake Morrison stood at the main control panel in the communications room of Orbital Station Nexus. The station floated in space above Earth, watching for any signals from deep space. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years, and most days were quiet. Today was different. The first strange signal came through at 0300 hours. The computer screens lit up with patterns that Jake had never seen before. The signal was strong and clear, coming from somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system. Jake called his team right away. Dr. Lisa Grant arrived first. She was the station's expert on languages and codes. Lisa looked at the patterns on the screen and her eyes went wide. "This is not natural," she said. "Something made this signal on purpose." More people came running to the communications room. Scientists, engineers, and military officers all crowded around the screens. The signal kept repeating the same pattern over and over. It was like someone was trying very hard to get their attention. "How far away is this coming from?" asked Jake. "At least 40 billion miles, said Dr. Grant. "Maybe more. But the signal is so strong that whoever sent it must have very powerful equipment." Jake felt his heart beating fast. In all his years of watching space, he had never seen anything like this. The signal was too organized to be random noise from stars or planets. Someone was trying to talk to them. Captain Ryan Hughes got the emergency call while he was on Earth. He grabbed his team and flew up to the station as fast as possible. Ryan brought special computers that could break codes and figure out what messages meant. When Ryan arrived at the station, he found everyone working without stopping. Dr. Grant and her team had been trying to understand the signal for 6 hours. They had coffee cups everywhere and papers scattered across every table. "What do we know so far?" Ryan asked. "The signal uses mathematics," said Dr. Grant. "Look at these numbers. They count by prime numbers, then they show the value of pi, then they do basic addition and subtraction. Whoever sent this wants us to know they are smart." Ryan studied the patterns. He had served in the military for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Keep working on it," he said. "I need to call Earth and tell them what is happening." The next few hours were the longest of Jake's life. Teams of people worked on different parts of the signal. Some looked at the math patterns. Others tried to find pictures or sounds hidden in the data. Everyone knew they were making history. Then Dr. Amy Carter made the big discovery. She was the station's best computer expert, and she had been running the signal through every code-breaking program they had. At 1500 hours, her computer finally cracked part of the message. "I've got something," Amy shouted. Everyone ran to her workstation. On her screen were symbols that looked almost like letters. Below the symbols, the computer showed what they might mean in English. The first word that came through clearly was help. The room went completely quiet. Jake felt chills run down his back. This was it. First contact with beings from another world, and they were asking for help. Over the next 2 hours, more words became clear. Danger. Death. Please. The aliens were not calling to say hello. They were in terrible trouble. Dr. Grant worked without eating or sleeping. She figured out that the aliens called themselves the Kaleri. They lived on planets around other stars, far from Earth, but something was attacking them. Something they called the Devourers. The message told a scary story. The Devourers moved from star to star, destroying everything they found. Whole worlds with billions of people had been wiped out. Ancient civilizations that had existed for millions of years were gone in just days. "They're asking us for help," said Dr. Grant. "But Jake, there's something strange about this message. They know about us. They know about Earth and humans. How is that possible?" asked Jake. Amy pulled up another part of the decoded message. "They've been listening to our radio signals for decades. They know about our wars, our movies, our music. They've been studying us." The message explained that the Kaleri had found Earth's radio signals years ago. They had watched human television shows and listened to human music. They had learned about human history and human wars. What they learned had both scared and amazed them. To the Kaleri, Earth was a death world. It was a planet so dangerous that most aliens could never survive there. Earthquakes, storms, volcanoes, wild animals, diseases, all things that would kill most alien species were just normal life for humans. The Kaleri had watched humans fight wars, survive disasters, and keep going no matter what happened to them. They had seen humans live through ice ages and asteroid impacts. They thought humans were the toughest species they had ever found. Now the Kaleri were facing something that their peaceful civilization could not fight. The Devourers were too strong for them. But they remembered the violent, tough humans from Earth. Maybe, they thought, the people from the Deathworld could help them. "They want us to come to their star system," said Dr. Grant. "They're making their last stand at a place called Kepler 442b. If we don't help them, they will all die." Jake looked around the room at his team. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. They were not alone. But their new neighbors were in deadly danger. Captain Ryan made the call to Earth within minutes. Emergency meetings were starting in every major capital. The president, the generals, the scientists, everyone needed to know about this message. The signal from space kept broadcasting. The Kaleri were still out there, still hoping that the tough humans from the Deathworld would hear their call and come to help them. Jake Morrison stood in the communications room, watching the alien signal pulse across his screens. Everything had changed in one day. Humanity was no longer alone, and somehow they had become the galaxy's only hope. Admiral Ben Parker sat in his office at Space Command headquarters, reading the most important report in human history. The alien message had been fully decoded, and the contents were both amazing and terrifying. His hands shook as he turned. Each page, the Kaleri had sent more than just a cry for help. They had included huge amounts of information about the galaxy, about other alien species, and most shocking of all, about humanity itself. Ben had been in the military for 30 years, but nothing had prepared him for what he was reading. Doctor Sam Rodriguez knocked on the door and walked in. Sam was Earth's top expert on the possibility of alien life. For 20 years he had written papers and given speeches about what first contact might be like. He had never imagined it would happen like this. "Admiral, we need to talk about what the aliens think of us," said Sam. His face was pale and serious. "I've been reading their files," said Ben. "Some of this doesn't make sense. They call Earth a death world. They think we're some kind of super warriors." Sam sat down and opened his laptop. "It makes perfect sense when you understand how they live. Admiral, the galaxy is full of peaceful species. They evolved on safe planets with gentle weather and no dangerous animals. They've never had to fight for survival the way humans have." Ben looked at a picture on his desk. It showed his hometown after a tornado had destroyed half the buildings. People were already cleaning up and rebuilding. To him, it was just what humans did when bad things happened. To aliens, it was proof that humans were incredibly tough. "Show me what they know about us," said Ben. Sam pulled up the alien files on his computer. "They've been watching our radio and television signals for 40 years. They've seen our news reports, our movies, our documentaries. They know about every war we've ever fought, every disaster we've survived." The first file was about human wars. The aliens had studied World War II, Vietnam, and dozens of other conflicts. What amazed them was not just that humans fought each other, but that they kept fighting even when things looked hopeless. They had watched footage of soldiers charging into battle against impossible odds. "They don't understand why we fight," said Sam. "Their species never developed warfare. When they have disagreements, they talk about them until everyone agrees. The idea of violence is completely foreign to them." Ben read about how the aliens viewed human weapons. They had never invented guns, bombs, or missiles. Their technology was all about creating and building, never about destroying. When they saw human military equipment, they were both fascinated and horrified. The second file was about Earth's environment. The aliens called it the most dangerous habitable planet they had ever found. They listed the threats that humans faced. Every day, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, ice ages, and asteroid impacts. Look at this, said Sam, pointing to a section about natural disasters. They can't believe we live on a planet where the ground shakes, the weather tries to kill us, and rocks fall from space. Most alien worlds are stable for millions of years. Earth changes constantly. Ben read about how aliens viewed human cities. They were amazed that humans built huge structures even though earthquakes could knock them down. They were shocked that humans lived near volcanoes and in areas hit by hurricanes. To them, it proved that humans were either incredibly brave or completely crazy. The third file was about human biology. The aliens had studied human anatomy through medical shows and science documentaries. They discovered that humans were built like predators, with forward-facing eyes and strong muscles. Most alien species were more like prey animals with eyes on the sides of their heads and weak bodies. They're particularly interested in human pain tolerance, said Sam. They've watched videos of people getting injured and continuing to function. Their species feels pain much more intensely than we do. A small cut that we would ignore could disable one of them for days. Ben found a section about human endurance. The aliens had watched marathon races and military training exercises. They couldn't understand how humans could run for hours or carry heavy loads for long distances. Their own bodies were designed for comfort, not for pushing through exhaustion and pain. The fourth file was about human psychology. The aliens had studied human behavior during crises. They had watched footage of people rescuing others during floods, fighting fires, and helping strangers in emergencies. This confused them because their species was naturally selfish and only helped their own families. They think we're insane, said Sam. But they also think we're heroic. They can't understand why humans risk their lives to help people they don't even know. Ben read about how aliens viewed human exploration. They were amazed that humans went to dangerous places just to see what was there. They had watched documentaries about mountain climbers, deep-sea divers, and astronauts. The idea of exploring dangerous places for no practical reason was completely alien to them. The fifth file was the most important one. It was about the Devourers. The aliens explained that this enemy was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They consumed entire planets, turning all life into fuel for their expansion. They had destroyed 3 major civilizations and were moving toward Calari space. Every peaceful species in the galaxy has tried to fight them, said Sam. They all failed. The Devourers adapt to any weapon used against them. They learn from every battle and become stronger. Ben understood why the aliens had called for help. Their peaceful nature and safe evolution had not prepared them for something like the Devourers. But humans, with their violent history and dangerous world, might be different. The final section of the alien files was an analysis of human military potential. The aliens believed that human weapons and tactics might work where others had failed. They thought that human unpredictability and willingness to take risks could surprise. The DEVOURERS. President Maria Santos called an emergency meeting of world leaders. Representatives from every nation gathered to hear about the alien message. The decision they had to make would affect all of humanity. Ben closed the files and looked out his window at the Earth below. For the first time in his life, he saw his home planet the way aliens did. It was a dangerous, violent world that had created a dangerous, violent species. But maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The message was clear. Humanity had a choice. They could stay on Earth and wait for the Devourers to eventually reach them, or they could go to space and fight an enemy that had never faced anything like them before. General Chris Young stood in the war room at Pentagon headquarters, looking at maps of space that showed the location of every human ship and space station. 3 days had passed since the world leaders made their decision. Humanity would answer the alien call for help. Now Chris had to figure out how to fight a war in space against an enemy no one had ever seen. The first problem was simple, but huge. Earth had never built ships for war in deep space. All human spacecraft were designed for traveling around the solar system. carrying supplies to Mars colonies and mining asteroids. They were tough ships, built to handle the dangerous space around Earth, but they were not warships. Captain Kate Murphy walked into the room carrying a thick folder of ship designs. Kate was the best space engineer in the Earth Defense Force. She had helped design most of the ships currently flying around the solar system. Now she had to turn those cargo ships and exploration vessels into a fleet that could fight the Devourers. "What do we have to work with?" asked Chris. Kate spread blueprints across the table. "We have 230 ships of various sizes. Most are cargo vessels, but we have 47 military patrol ships and 15 heavy transport ships. The good news is that they're all built much stronger than they need to be." Chris looked at the ship designs. Human spacecraft were built to survive in the dangerous space around Earth. Solar radiation, asteroid impacts, and the strong gravity of the sun made space travel near Earth very risky. Human ships had thick armor, multiple backup systems, and powerful engines. "The aliens think our ships are primitive," said Kate, "but they also think they're incredibly durable. Their ships are built for safety and comfort. Ours are built to survive anything." Dr. Paul Johnson arrived with his team from the Weapons Research Facility. Paul had spent his career designing weapons for Earth's military. Now he had to figure out how to fight aliens in space. The Kaleri had sent information about Devourer technology, and it was both helpful and scary. "Tell me about their weapons," said Chris. Paul opened his laptop and showed images from the alien files. "The Devourers use energy weapons that can adapt to any defense. When the Kaleri shoot at them with energy weapons, the Devourers learn how to block those weapons within minutes. Every species that has fought them has failed because of this adaptation ability." Chris studied the information. "What about our weapons?" "That's where it gets interesting," said Paul. "Human weapons are completely different from anything the galaxy has ever seen. We use kinetic weapons, guns that fire solid bullets. We use explosives that create shock waves. We use nuclear weapons that release pure energy through atomic reactions." The alien files showed that most galactic species had never developed these types of weapons. They had focused on energy beams and defensive shields. The concept of throwing chunks of metal at high speed or creating explosions was foreign to them. Lieutenant Emma Davis was in charge of adapting human weapons for space combat. She had been working without sleep for 3 days, trying to figure out how to mount tank guns and missile launchers on spacecraft that were never designed to carry them. "The railguns are our best bet," said Emma. "We can mount them on the larger ships. They fire metal slugs at incredible speed using magnetic acceleration. No energy beam, no fancy technology, just a chunk of metal moving fast enough to punch through anything." Kate looked at Emma's modifications. "What about the smaller ships, missile pods?" said Emma. "We strap clusters of nuclear missiles to the outside of patrol ships. It's not elegant, but it should work. The missiles are designed to penetrate Earth's atmosphere, so they're built to handle extreme conditions." Chris approved the modifications. Within hours, every shipyard on Earth and in the orbital stations was working at maximum capacity. Ships were being pulled from cargo runs and passenger service. Military vessels were being upgraded with the most powerful weapons Earth could build. The recruitment drive was unlike anything in human history. Volunteers came from every nation and every branch of the military. Space Force pilots, Navy submarine crews, Army tank drivers, and Air Force fighter pilots all volunteered for the mission. They knew they might never come home, but they also knew that Earth would eventually be attacked if the Devourers were not stopped. Commander Tony Walsh had been flying cargo ships to Mars for 5 years. Now he found himself in command of the UES Defender, a cargo vessel that had been converted into a missile platform. The ship looked strange with weapon pods attached to its hull, but Tony knew it could fight. "How many ships will be ready?" asked Chris. Kate checked her status reports. 200 ships will be ready for combat in 1 week. "We're working as fast as we can, but we can't rush the weapon installations. One mistake could destroy a ship when the weapons fire." The final challenge was training the crews. Most of the volunteers had never fought in space combat because humans had never fought in space combat. They had to learn everything from scratch, using computer simulations and the tactical information provided by the Kaleri. Colonel Rickstone was in charge of training the fleet commanders. He had fought in wars on Earth, but space combat was completely different. There was no up or down, no ground to take, no air to breathe. Everything had to be relearned. The aliens fight in organized formations, said Rick. They coordinate their attacks and move like a single unit. We're going to do something different. We're going to fight like humans. The human battle plan was based on the same tactics that had made human militaries successful on Earth. Small units acting independently, adapting to changing situations, taking risks that other species would never consider. It was chaotic and unpredictable, which might be exactly what was needed against an enemy that learned from every battle. Admiral Ben Parker took command of the flagship UES Retribution, the largest and most heavily armed ship in the fleet. The Retribution had been a space station construction ship, but now it carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon dot as the fleet prepared to depart. Messages came from all over Earth. Children sent drawings to the crews. Scientists sent good luck wishes. World leaders made speeches about humanity's first step into galactic politics. The most important message came from the Kaleri. They reported that the Devourers had reached their star system and were beginning their attack. Time was running out. The human fleet had to leave immediately if they wanted to help. Chris Young watched the ships launch from Earth's orbital platforms. 200 vessels carrying the hopes of humanity headed into deep space. They were flying toward a battle that would determine the fate of entire civilizations. For the first time in human history, Earth's warriors were leaving their home planet to fight for others, the species that aliens called too violent for a peaceful galaxy was about to prove that sometimes violence was the only answer to evil. Admiral Ben Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Kepler 442 star system looked like a nightmare. Thousands of dark ships surrounded the planet where the Kaleri were making their last stand. The Devourer fleet was massive, bigger than anything the humans had imagined. "My God," whispered Captain Kate Murphy from her ship, the UES Defiant. "There are so many of them." The planet below was already showing terrible damage. Great black scars marked places where the Devourers had begun consuming the surface. Cities that had existed for thousands of years were being turned into fuel for the alien war machine. Time was running out for the Kaleri. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker." Ben said into his radio, "Remember your training. Stay mobile, hit hard, and don't give them time to adapt to our weapons. Good luck to all of you." The first alien voice the humans heard came from the planet. Commander Zethka, the last military leader of the Kaleri Federation, sent a message. That was translated by the ship's computers. "Human fleet, we cannot believe you actually came. Our sensors show only 200 ships against thousands of Devourers. This is brave beyond measure, but I fear it is not enough." Ben replied immediately. "Commander Zethka, you called for help from the Deathworld. We're here to give it to you. Just stay alive a little longer." The Devourer ships turned toward the human fleet. They were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The ships seemed to absorb light, making them look like holes in space. They moved in perfect coordination like parts of a single giant organism. "All ships, begin attack pattern Alpha," ordered Ben. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win." The first wave of Kaleri ships that were still fighting tried a conventional energy weapon attack on the Devourers. The humans watched as bright energy beams struck the enemy ships. For a few seconds, the beams seemed to work, damaging several Devourer vessels. Then something changed. The enemy ships began to glow, and the energy beams stopped working completely. "They're adapting," said Dr. Sam Rodriguez, who was aboard the Retribution as a scientific observer. "Just like the report said. They learn how to defend against any weapon after being hit by it a few times. Then it's a good thing we brought different Weapons, said Ben. All ships open fire with kinetic weapons. The human fleet opened fire with railguns and missile launchers. Streams of metal slugs and nuclear warheads flew toward the Devourer fleet. The enemy ships tried to use the same defensive measures. That had stopped the energy weapons, but the human weapons were completely different. The railgun rounds punched through Devourer shields like they weren't there. The ships had no defense against chunks of metal flying at incredible speed. Nuclear missiles exploded in brilliant flashes, tearing apart enemy vessels that had seemed invincible just moments before. "Direct hits," shouted Commander Tony Walsh from the UES Defender. "Their shields don't work against our weapons," but the Devourers were quick learners. Within minutes, they began changing their tactics. They couldn't stop the human weapons, but they could try to destroy the human ships before they could fire again. The battle turned into a deadly dance. Devourer ships swarmed toward the humans, firing energy weapons that could destroy any ship. They hit. But the human ships were built for the dangerous space around Earth. Their thick armor and multiple backup systems kept them fighting even after taking serious damage. Captain Kate Murphy led a group of smaller ships in a daring attack on the Devourer command vessel. The alien ship was the size of a small moon, directing the entire enemy fleet. Kate knew that destroying it might disrupt the enemy coordination. "This is insane," said Lieutenant Emma Davis from her patrol ship. "We're flying straight into the middle of their fleet." "Insane is what humans do best," replied Kate. "All ships, follow me in, ramming speed." The concept of ramming speed was something no alien species had ever developed. The idea of deliberately crashing one ship into another was considered suicide by galactic standards. But human ships were built to survive collisions with asteroids, and human crews were trained to take risks that other species would never consider. Kate's ship, the Hughes Defiant, smashed into the side of the Devourer command vessel. The reinforced hull, designed to handle impacts in Earth's dangerous asteroid belt, carved through the alien ship's structure like a knife through paper. The command ship began to break apart. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Kate's damage. "Control officer, but we're still flying." With their command ship destroyed, the Devourer fleet began to lose coordination. Individual ships started acting independently instead of working together. This played right into human tactics, which were based on chaos and unpredictability. Colonel Rick Stone led a group of missile ships in what became known as the Terran Swarm Attack. Instead of flying in formation like the aliens expected, the human ships scattered in all directions, attacking from every angle at once. "Spread out and hit them from everywhere," ordered Rick. "Don't give them time to figure out what we're doing." The Devourers had never faced anything like this. Their technology was designed to counter organized attacks by coordinated fleets. But the humans fought like a pack of wild animals, each ship adapting to opportunities and threats in real time. Nuclear warheads exploded throughout the enemy fleet. Railgun rounds tore through ship after ship. Human vessels darted between the larger Devourer ships, firing at point-blank range before speeding away. The turning point came when Commander Zethka led the surviving Philaris ships in a final attack. Inspired by the human example, the normally peaceful aliens abandoned their careful tactics and joined the chaotic battle. "For our children," Zethka broadcast to all ships, "for our worlds, for our future." The combined human and Philaris fleet overwhelmed the Devourers. Ships that had seemed unstoppable began exploding one after another. The enemy that had conquered entire civilizations found themselves being destroyed by weapons they had never encountered and tactics they couldn't understand. Admiral Parker watched the last Devourer ship explode in a brilliant flash of light. The battle was over. Humanity had won its first interstellar war. "All ships report casualties," Ben ordered. The cost had been high. 47 human ships had been lost, along with their brave crews. But they had saved an entire civilization and proven that the Devourers could be defeated. As the smoke cleared, signals began coming from the planet below. The Philaris had survived. The Deathworld warriors had kept their promise. The battle for Kepler 442b was over. but Admiral Ben Parker knew the real work was just beginning. The Devourer fleet was destroyed, but the damage to the planet was terrible. Huge areas of the surface had been consumed, leaving nothing but empty craters where cities used to be. The surviving Kaleri were hiding in underground shelters, afraid to come outside. Dr. Sam Rodriguez stood in the shuttle bay of the UES Retribution, preparing for the first face-to-face meeting between humans and aliens. He had studied alien languages his whole career, but he had never imagined he would actually get to use that knowledge. His hands shook as he checked his translation equipment one more time. "Ready, Doctor?" asked Ben. "As ready as anyone can be for making history," Sam replied. The shuttle landed at the main Kaleri Command Center, a building that had somehow survived the Devourer attack. When the shuttle doors opened, Sam saw his first alien. Commander Zethka was tall and thin, with large eyes and pale blue skin. He moved carefully, as if he was afraid of everything around him. "Welcome to our world, humans from Earth," said Zethka through the translator. "We owe you our lives. Without your help, we would all be dead." Sam had prepared a formal speech, but when he saw the grateful alien commander, he forgot all the fancy words. "We came because you asked for help. That's what humans do." Over the next few days, more meetings took place between humans and Kaleri. The aliens were amazed by everything about their rescuers. Human soldiers could lift heavy objects that required machines for Kaleri to move. Human doctors worked for hours without rest, something that would kill a Kaleri from exhaustion. Captain Kate Murphy was put in charge of helping repair the damaged planet. Her engineering teams worked alongside Kaleri technicians to rebuild destroyed cities. The aliens were shocked by how quickly humans worked and how willing they were to take risks to get jobs done faster. "Your people are incredible," Zethka told Sam during one of their daily meetings. "We have watched you for years through your radio signals, but seeing you in person is different. You do things that we thought were impossible." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. Species that had been hiding from the Devourers for years suddenly sent messages to Earth. They wanted to meet the warriors from the Deathworld who had done what no one else could do. Dr. Sam Rodriguez found himself becoming Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. Alien ships began arriving at Kepler 442b, carrying representatives from dozens of different species. They all wanted to see the humans who had defeated the Devourers. The aliens were all similar in some ways. They came from safe worlds with gentle weather and no dangerous animals. They had never developed weapons or learned to fight. They lived long, peaceful lives focused on art, science, and philosophy. War was something they had read about in human transmissions but never experienced themselves. "You have to understand," explained Ambassador Velnara from the Centauri Republic, "violence is not natural for us. When we disagree, we discuss the problem until everyone agrees on a solution. The idea of hurting someone to solve a problem is completely foreign to us." Sam began to understand why the galaxy had been so helpless against the Devourers. These peaceful species had never learned to fight because they had never needed to fight. Earth's harsh environment had forced humans to become warriors, but most of the galaxy had evolved in paradise. Captain Kate Murphy was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Kepler 442b space station. The installation became the headquarters for what the aliens started calling the Deathworlder Defense Force. Ships from Earth began patrolling space around the peaceful worlds, protecting them from threats they couldn't handle themselves. The Kaleri shared their advanced technology with humans. Faster than light travel, energy shields, and medical devices that could heal injuries in minutes. In exchange, humans provided military protection and training for the few aliens brave enough to learn how to fight, but the galaxy was not completely safe. Reports began coming in of other threats in distant star systems, pirates who attacked peaceful trading ships, ancient war machines left over from extinct civilizations, hostile species from outside the galaxy who might be even worse than the Devours. Admiral Ben Parker established the Deep Space Command at Kepler 442b. Human ships began exploring farther into space, always ready to respond to calls for help. Earth's military had found a new purpose as the protectors of galactic civilization. Jake Morrison, the communications officer who had first detected the alien signal, was promoted to Director of Interstellar Communications. His job was to monitor space for distress signals and coordinate rescue missions. The quiet communications room on orbital station Nexus had become the center of a galaxy-wide emergency response network. "Signal coming in from the Vega system," reported one of Jake's technicians. "Looks like another distress call." Jake looked at the signal patterns on his screen. They were different from the Kaleri signal, coming from a species humanity had never encountered before. But the message was clear: someone was in trouble and needed help. "Prep a response fleet," Jake ordered. "Let them know the cavalry is coming." The transformation of humanity's role in the galaxy was complete. The species that had been too violent for peaceful space had become its greatest defenders. Human children on Earth looked up at the night sky, knowing that their brothers and sisters were out there among the stars, keeping the light of civilization burning. President Maria Santos stood in the Oval Office, reading reports from across the galaxy. Human ships were patrolling trade routes. Human engineers were helping rebuild destroyed worlds, and human soldiers were training alien defense forces. Earth had become the military headquarters of galactic civilization. The final report on her desk was from the science team studying Devourer technology. They had found something disturbing. The Devourers were not the original threat. They had been created by something else, something even more dangerous that was still out there in the dark spaces between galaxies. Maria looked out her window at the peaceful Earth below. Children were playing in parks, people were going to work, life continued as it always had. But now Earth carried a new responsibility. Humanity had become the galaxy's shield against the darkness. The message was clear to everyone who looked up at the stars. In a universe full of peaceful civilizations, sometimes the most dangerous species made the best protectors. The warriors from the Deathworld would stand guard over the galaxy, ready to fight whatever threats emerged from the endless night of space. Somewhere in deep space, human ships patrolled the void, carrying the promise that no peaceful world would ever stand alone against evil again.